Hey everyone, Aqua Alex Cardinelli here, and for all my fish keeping subscribers, I got a treat for you today. This is like a little Christmas present to all my saltwater fish keepers and all my fish keeping subscribers in general. I am about to go live on American Variety Network with my saltwater fish chat series. And today, I'm going to be talking about clownfish. I'm going to be talking about the different kinds of clownfish, how to keep and care for clownfish, and much more. So, the one question I have for you, are you ready to learn about clownfish? Great. Let's go ahead and get the show started. Hey, fish keepers! Hope you are doing great, and welcome to the second episode of Saltwater Tropical Fish Chat here live on Aquarium Talk the Podcast, here live on American Variety Network. This is a fun saltwater fish show that I do each month. Last month, we talked about the beautiful diamond goby. And this month, tonight, I've got an awesome fish that I'm going to talk about. But first, I'm your host, Aqua Alex Cardinelli. Tonight, I'll be talking to you about one of my favorite saltwater fish and one of the world's most famous saltwater fish, the clownfish, or shall I say Nemo fish. Disney's 2003 film Finding Nemo has helped make the Ocellaris clownfish and other clownfish so popular. Now, I currently have a pair of Darwin black and white Ocellaris clownfish in my 29-gallon fish only with live rock tank, and I'm loving them. Now, I'm planning on getting either a lightning maroon clownfish or a gold stripe maroon clownfish for my 120-gallon fish only with live rock aquarium system. Now, tonight, I'm going to provide you tons of information on as most of the clownfish species as I can. Now, clownfish are very hardy and make for an awesome beginner fish and could be kept in almost any saltwater aquarium. Now, here's some of the planned topics that I'm going to talk about on tonight's show. I'm going to give you general information on clownfish. I'm going to talk about the different kinds of clownfish. I'll talk about feeding clownfish. I'll tell you some did you know facts on clownfish and much more. Later on in the show, I would like to talk about mixing the different clownfish species. Now, this show is being recorded live right here on Blog Talk Radio, so if you happen to be one of my lucky live listeners, you can go ahead and call in. Call in at 1-347-989-8142 to ask me any questions on clownfish, or discuss why you love clownfish, or just to discuss clownfish. 1-347-989-8142. Alright guys, so the American Variety Network is going to take a brief introduction break, and when we come back, we're going to start talking about clownfish. This clownfish show begins right after a word from the American Variety Network. Alright, so let's begin talking about the wonderful clownfish. Now, I'm going to start today's show by having a discussion on why I personally like clownfish. one of the biggest things that I like about clownfish is their personality. Clownfish have such a great personality. The way they swim is comical. I guarantee you, if you get a saltwater aquarium and you add a pair of clownfish to that aquarium, the way they swim is going to make you laugh. Now, they have some of the best personality that I have seen in a fish. My black and white clownfish will literally eat out of my hand. They're like little puppies. I think clownfish have such great personalities, and it's really fun doing water changes and feeding my clownfish, because when I'm doing a water change, my big female black and white Ocellaris clownfish will actually peck and bite my hand because she hates having her tank cleaned. So I just love the personality of the clownfish. Now, the next thing I like about clownfish is their color and markings. You know, clownfish have such great color, whether it's a common Ocellaris clown with the beautiful orange and white stripes, or if it's the black and white Ocellaris clownfish with the black and white stripes, or if it's a gold striped maroon, which is a deep maroon red color with beautiful yellow to gold stripes. All of the clownfish out there are all very, very beautiful. Now, the nature of clownfish is awesome. Now, in the wild, clownfish host anemones. And in a home aquarium, if you are experienced in keeping reefs, you could probably keep clownfish and anemones at home. Now, seeing clownfish host an anemone in an aquarium is breathtaking. It's awesome. So, if you are an experienced saltwater hobbyist, I really recommend having an anemone with your clownfish. But luckily, captive bred clownfish do not require anemones. It's just an added bonus to them if you do have an anemone. Now, I personally think that the black and white clownfish are breathtaking. I think they are perhaps the prettiest clowns. I don't know though, because the other half of me is arguing and saying that the gold striped maroons are awesome looking. So, personally, my two favorite clownfish are the black and white clownfish and the gold striped maroon clownfish. Now, I personally fell in love with my black and white clownfish. Now, the last thing that I like about clownfish is that they are extremely hardy. They are one of the easiest fish to keep. They are an awesome beginner fish. So if you are a beginner like me, clownfish are for you. They are virtually hardy, really hardy. It is hard to kill a clownfish. If you manage to kill a clownfish, well, there is something wrong with your aquarium. These guys are really hardy, and they are a very, very nice fish. Alright, so that's what I like about clownfish. Now, what do you guys like about clownfish? You can call in at 1-347-989-8142 to discuss this. Or if you're catching the archive of this episode, please leave your thoughts on why you like clownfish in the comment section below. Now, I want to talk about the types of clownfish I have. Right now, currently, I only have two clownfish, and that is two black and white Ocellaris clownfish. Now, a little bit about the black and white clownfish. Now, the black and white Ocellaris clownfish are actually normal. They do appear in the wild. The black and white clownfish are actually from Darwin, Australia. So, some people call them the Darwin Ocellaris clownfish, or some people call them the black and white clownfish. but they do exist in the wild. However, wild-caught black and white Ocellaris clownfish are extremely hard to get, and they are quite expensive. However, luckily, there are plenty of captive bred black and white Ocellaris clownfish out there. Now, as juveniles, the black and white clownfish will have orange faces and a black and white body. As they mature, the orange faces may disappear. However, some people have reported that the orange faces have stayed into maturity. So it just depends on the individual clownfish. But I want my black and white clownfish to lose their orange faces. However, I think the orange face complements the fish. I like it, but I want a pure black and white Ocellaris clown. So like I said, right now I only have 2 clownfish, and that is my 2 black and white clownfish. Now, I am currently setting up and cycling a very big 120-gallon aquarium, and I'm going to be doing a fish only with live rock tank, with some tangs. I'm going to have a yellow tang, a blue hippo tang, and a niger trigger, a one-spot fox face. So it's going to be a nice predatory tank. But I definitely want to have a clownfish in there. So, in my 120, I am currently planning what clownfish I want. Now, I am thinking about getting either a lightning maroon clownfish or a gold striped maroon, or maybe 4 to 6 Ocellaris clownfish. Now, if I do 4 to 6 Ocellaris clowns, I will do 2 pairs of black and white clowns and a pair of normal Ocellaris clownfish. What do you guys think? Which clowns should I get for my 120-gallon aquarium? Or should I be risky and should I try a gold striped maroon clown and a pair of black and white Ocellaris clownfish? What do you guys think? Maybe if I acclimated them together, it could work. Call in at 1-347-989-8142 or post in the comment section below your thoughts on this matter. Alright, so I thought that would be a fun way to start today's show. Now we're going to get into the information on clownfish. So here is the general info on clownfish. Now, clownfish are also known as anemone fish because in the wild, clownfish have a symbiotic relationship with anemones. Now, there are currently 27 species of clownfish. Now, did you know that clownfish are native to wide ranges of the warm waters of the Pacific, and some species range overlap others? Clownfish are not found in the Atlantic, so you can't find any clownfish in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, clownfish, like I said, live in a mutual relationship with sea anemones. Once an anemone has been adopted, the clownfish will defend it aggressively. However, clownfish in an aquarium environment can exist very well without an anemone. This may be advisable as anemones are extremely difficult to keep alive even for experienced aquarists. Now, the anemone is required in nature because reef life is dangerous for small, brightly colored fish with very poor swimming abilities. In an aquarium lacking predators, it is not needed. For this reason, clownfish never stray far from their host. But in an aquarium where they don't have to forage for food, it is very common for clownfish to remain within 6 to 12 inches of their host for an entire lifetime. So in the wild, they never ever leave their enemy because, or the anemone, because they might get eaten by the predators that are out there. Now, did you also know that clownfish and damselfish are the only species which can avoid the stings of an anemone, which can be quite potent? I think it's quite cool that clownfish can actually survive from the sting of an anemone and not get injured or even hurt. Now, did you also know that a clownfish is actually a damsel? I never knew that. That's pretty cool. And they're a lot more peacefuler than damsels. Now, clownfish are among the few marine fish that can be bred in captivity in commercial quantities. Hobbyists are advised to purchase captive bred clownfish and other marine animals whenever possible. They are good for a marine aquarium because they are friendly and easy to feed. They adapt well in captivity and can be easily studied for scientific research. These warm water fish have a higher metabolism, which makes them more active than the cold water fish. Now, let's talk about clownfish breeding. Clownfish lay eggs on any flat surface close to or under protection of their host anemones. These eggs are cared for by the male and hatched under complete darkness after a period of 7 to 10 days. Wow, that's pretty cool to know. Now, clownfish are omnivorous. That means their diets range from flakes to meat, and they'll virtually eat just about anything. My clownfish are not picky at all. Now, clownfish are relatively small fish. Some clownfish in aquariums can grow to only 4 inches in length. Fish in the wild can grow to a length of 5 inches. But there are some clownfish out there, like the maroon clown, that can get anywhere from 6 to 8 inches in captivity. Now, the maximum size varies by species, but just like humans, males are smaller than females. Males are a lot smaller than females in the clownfish world. I'm just kidding about the human part, though. But it is true that clownfish males are a lot smaller than the clownfish females. Now, clownfish are born sexually immature based on signals from their environment, and being physically mature, which is 12 to 24 months, they will either remain sexually immature, change into a male, or change into a male then female. A group of clownfish is always built into a hierarchy of this type, with the female the largest and most aggressive at the top. The change from juvenile to male and male to female is irreversible. If the female should die or be removed from the group, the most dominant male then changes into a female, and the rest of the males move up a rank on the hierarchy. Now, in typical home aquariums, a juvenile only several months old can make the change from juvenile to male to female in as little as a month. Because of this, pairing clownfish can be a tricky proposition, as most hobbyists tend to select the largest and most dominant specimen, which is always going to be a female, to mate with their own female at home. Usually 2 females will tend to fight regularly and frequently lock jaws. Some hobbyists describe it as kissing. Now, in a successful pair, the male will exhibit submissive behavior. Usually, this behavior entails the more aggressive female darting at the male and the male turning sideways and quivering. Now, the most common species of clownfish, which would be the Ocellaris clowns and the Percula clowns, They are fairly easy to breed in the home aquarium. The female will be the largest of the pair, and the two fish will usually stay close to each other in one area of the tank or in a host anemone. After several months in a successful pair, the fish will begin spawning. The female's abdomen will bulge with eggs, ready to be deposited. She will usually find a flat surface near her host anemone if present to lay her eggs before they can be fertilized by the male. The eggs will normally hatch in 6 to 11 days, depending on temperature and other water parameters. In home aquariums, the fry must be reared in a separate aquarium on a diet of rotifiers than baby brine shrimp to have any chance of survival. Now, I bet you a lot of my saltwater listeners and my fish keeping listeners already know this, but did you know that the clownfish featured in the 2003 Pixar animated movie Finding Nemo? Yes, Nemo and Marlin were clownfish. They were the Ocellaris clownfish, I believe. Now, despite the content of the movie, where a young clownfish's father must rescue his son after being stolen to be sold as a pet, that is what the story of the movie is. But we all know that public demand for clownfish as pets has tripled shortly after its release. Now, some environmental protection activists regards this as a catastrophe, as this species is already facing the threat of extinction due to reduction of its natural habitat, which of course is coral reefs, which in turn is due to global climate changes as well as pollution of the seas. It is also feared that people may have attempted to send fish back into the open sea by flushing them down the toilet as demonstrated in the movie. Unfortunately, they will not be able to survive the sewage plant. Another problem is that many buyers lack basic knowledge, like needing a saltwater tank to take care of such specialty fish. Ladies and gentlemen, clownfish are saltwater. They need a saltwater aquarium. Now, in 2016, there's going to be part 2 of Finding Nemo, but it's going to be called Finding Dory. And this leads me to believe that the saltwater hobby is going to get extremely popular again in 2016. The clownfish are going to get extremely popular, and Dory and all of the blue hippo tangs are going to get extremely popular in 2016. It might be a good part of the hobby because a lot of people are going to research how to take care of these fish and how to have a saltwater aquarium, and more people are going to enter the saltwater hobby, and they're going to get clownfish and hippo tangs and stuff. But really, you have to research before you jump into the hobby. Because if you saw fish on a movie and you want them, that's good for you. But make sure you research. Because you guys know that the blue hippo tangs get pretty large. So keep that in mind. So if you know anyone that loves Finding Nemo and they end up watching the new movie coming out and they want to have a hippo tang and a clownfish, make sure you tell them that a blue hippo tang gets pretty big. Anyways, back on topic here. Let's jump back into the care and discussion on clownfish. Now, I want to talk to you about the kinds of clownfish that are out there. Now, you have two most common clownfish species. These are the ones that the little kids and even adults call Nemo. They are the popular clownfish and the Ocellaris clownfish. Now, these two clownfish have grown to become so popular that they have made several fancy designer clownfish. Now, back in the 90s and early 2000s, there was only the Percula clowns and the Ocellaris clownfish. But in recent years, the saltwater hobby has taken off and more people have loved clownfish. So ORA and other clownfish companies have created some awesome species of clownfish using the Percula clown and the Ocellaris clownfish. Here are some examples of the fancy designer clownfish. First, you've got the Picasso clownfish. Now, a Picasso clownfish is a Percula clownfish that has some black coloring and bolder white bars. Now, there's also a platinum clownfish. The white blends with the orange and creates a creamsicle effect. There is a snowflake clown, which is basically essentially a Ocellaris clown, but with whiter white bars. There is a black snowflake clownfish, which is really just a black and white snowflake clown. There is a naked Ocellaris clown. No white stripes at all, just an orange fish. Personally, I think the naked clownfish is kind of ugly. It looks retarded to me, but that's just my personal opinion. Now, there's also a midnight clownfish, which is a brown clownfish with little to no white. There is a domino clownfish, one of my personal favorite clowns. It's a black clown with just one white spot. There is the misbar Ocellaris clown, which is one or more white bars are missing. There is my personal favorite Ocellaris clown, the black and white Ocellaris clownfish, aka the Darwin clownfish that comes from Darwin, Australia. There is the caramel Ocellaris, which is a light brown clownfish. So those are your most popular clownfish species. Obviously, the less expensive ones are going to be the common Perculas and the common Ocellaris. Your fancy designer Ocellarises and your fancy designer Perculas are going to be very expensive. I'd expect to pay anywhere from $40 to $100 for like the snowflake and the platinums and all the fancier ones. But the black and white clownfish, surprisingly, are almost the same price as the regular Ocellaris clownfish. Now, let's talk about the maroon clownfish, the ones that get the 6 inches. Now, you've got a gold flake maroon clownfish, a gold stripe maroon clownfish, a gold dot maroon clownfish, a gold nugget maroon clownfish, a lightning maroon clownfish. So there's a lot of maroon clowns out there. Plus, there's also the normal maroon clown. Now, the gold nugget, the gold dot, and the lightning maroon, they're all ORA maroon clowns. They're designer maroon clowns, but they're nice, just like the normal maroon clowns are. And then there's some other different kinds of clowns out there. You've got your Clarky clownfish, you've got your tomato clownfish, you've got your cinnamon clownfish, and you also have your skunk clownfish. So there is a wide variety of different species of clownfish out there. Now you see, clownfish are really popular because they are loved by a lot of people in the aquarium hobby. Now, ORA has done a phenomenal job on creating some wonderful, fancy designer clownfish. I have to give ORA credit for doing what they do to the marine hobby. They have tank-raised dragonettes, they've got all these fancy designer clownfish, and they've got a lot of awesome fish. I love ORA for that reason. Alright, so now we're going to get into the care of individual species. And I'm going to start by talking about the most common clownfish species, caring for the Ocellaris and Percula clownfish. Now, Ocellaris and popular clownfish are very easy to take care of and can become wonderful pets. Now, in captivity, these two species of clownfish can live for over a decade and will grow to almost become part of the family. They are active, engaging fish and will follow you as you walk by the tank. In fact, many people can actually feed their clownfish by hand, like I do with my black and white Ocellaris. Now, Ocellaris and popular clownfish tank size. The first thing many people want to know is how large of an aquarium is needed to keep clownfish. That really depends on a few factors, but generally clownfish will do well in tanks that are quite small. Ocellaris and popular clowns can do good in nano tanks of about 10 to 20 gallons. But I really recommend a 20 gallon at the least for clownfish. Now, popular clowns and Ocellaris clowns do not usually need a lot of room to swim like some fish do, as they will often swim up and down in a relatively small area much of the time. They will even be happier in a small tank if they have a host, such as an anemone or a coral, that they can use for refuge. Now, the real problem with a smaller aquarium is that it requires a lot more maintenance than does a larger tank. Now, in a small tank, toxins such as ammonia and nitrates will build up faster in relation to the water volume of the tank, resulting in poor water quality. This leads to algae growth and unhealthy tank and habitats. With a small tank, it is vitally important to have quality filtration combined with regular water changes. A protein skimmer would be beneficial, but it's not always necessary if water changes are done on schedule. So like I said, I'd recommend a 20 gallon and up for the popular and Ocellaris clowns. Now, water parameters for the popular and false popular clownfish. The water should be maintained at a temperature of about 73 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, possibly slightly higher when breeding. pH should be at 8.0 to 8.4. The specific gravity or salinity should be between 1.021 and 1.026 and stable, and other water parameters should be within the generally acceptable levels of a saltwater aquarium. Ammonia 0, nitrates and nitrites less than 0.2 ppm. There should be ample water movement and sufficient lighting for the tank setup. For instance, if keeping enemies in the aquarium, you should have very strong lighting. However, fish-only tanks do not require intense lighting, as we all know. Now, let's talk about feeding your clownfish. Ocellaris clowns will happily accept a wide variety of foods. In general, any quality flake or pellet food made for carnivores or omnivores will do just fine. They will benefit from a varied diet. Mixing in some frozen foods or even live foods will keep your clownfish happy and healthy for years. It is best to feed at least once per day. However, depending on the size of the tank and the other tank mates, clownfish will do just fine being fed every other day. This will cut back on maintenance issues, although your clownfish will obviously grow at a slower rate. Now, they can be fed as much food as they will eat in about 2 or 3 minutes. You want to be sure food is not floating around the tank for long periods of time or getting stuck in rocks and other crevices. This will lead to poor water quality and algae issues. Now, a good cleanup crew, such as snails, crabs, and starfish, will aid in keeping any extra food from hanging around too long. Now, if you're hoping to breed your fish, then the feedings will need to be up to at least 3 times per day with a wide variety of foods. Now let's talk about the Percula and Ocellaris clownfish tank mates. Now, clownfish tend to be very small and relatively slow moving. With this in mind, it's important that they aren't placed with larger, carnivorous, aggressive fish such as lionfish and groupers, because the lionfish and groupers can easily eat small clownfish. Otherwise, there are not many limits to the type of tank in which Ocellaris clownfish can live. They do equally well in fish-only tanks, tanks with live rock or none, community tanks, more aggressive tanks to a degree of course, and full reef tanks with corals. They do not need an enemy to live or stay healthy in captivity. Although the symbiotic relationship of a clownfish hosting in an anemone is a beautiful thing, many clowns in captivity will never ever host one, even when given the opportunity. Here are some great tank mates for the Ocellaris clownfish, depending on the setup of the aquarium. Damselfish, tangs, all sorts of tangs can live with a clownfish. Blue hippo tang, yellow tang, coal tang, naso tang, blonde naso tang, clown tang. There's a lot of different tangs that can live with clownfish. Wrasses, blennies, angelfish, dartfish like firefish, puffers, gobies, soft or hard corals, enemies, and marine inverts like snails, crabs, shrimp, and things of that nature. And I know I keep pronouncing anemones wrong. I just have some like weird problem with pronouncing the word enemy or anemones. But no, a lot of people do as well. So the one thing to keep in mind is that clownfish will often not get along with other clownfish in the tank. Ocellaris clownfish are among the least aggressive, however. Multiple clownfish, even other Ocellaris, will often fight. If you want to have multiple clownfish, it is best to introduce them at the same time and make sure they have plenty of room. Alternatively, you can introduce a smaller clown, which is likely a male or a juvenile, to a more established, somewhat larger clownfish. The larger clown will likely be aggressive to the newcomer, but as long as they are not both females, the smaller fish will usually submit to the female and become the male. They will pair up and sometimes even become mates. Now, mixing different species of clownfish is not usually recommended except in very large tanks. However, occasionally, even the different species will bond and sometimes even mate. Overall, clownfish tanks are relatively easy to set up and maintain. Keep your fish fed, keep the water as clean as possible, and make sure they are not being harassed by their tank mates, and the Ocellaris clownfish will become the tank favorite in no time at all. Alright, so that's care for the Ocellaris and Percula clownfish. Now let's talk about another common type of clown, and that is the tomato clown. You know, my local fish store, School of Fish Inc., has a breeding pair, male and female pair, of tomato clowns. They will not separate them. They've been there for the last few months, and they're actually a great price. I think it's like $150 for the pair, but they're very large. I like tomato clowns, but I don't know if I want them. They might be a little bit too aggressive for me. But if you are in the Springfield, Mass area or the Western Mass area and looking for a breeding pair of tomato clownfish, check out School of Fish Inc. Now, tomato clownfish are readily available and are very hardy, making them a great choice as a beginner fish. Now, you can usually find tomato clownfish at local pet stores for $10 to $20 and even cheaper online. Breeders are breeding this fish in captivity, which should hopefully lower this price even more. Now, the tomato clownfish will eat most fish foods that you place in the aquarium. Flakes, freeze-dried, frozen, and live foods are eaten with gusto. Try to provide a variety of foods for optimum health and coloration. Now, the tomato clownfish can be territorial with other fish that approach their space in the tank. They may also scrap with other clownfish species in the same tank, and for this reason, it is advisable to only keep one species in your aquarium. If you have an extremely large tank, you may be able to keep more than one clown species in your aquarium. They may also fight with other tomato clownfish in the same tank. Now, tomato clownfish do not need an enemy to survive in the home aquarium. Anemones can be beneficial for the clownfish, but the host anemones that are found in their natural environment can be difficult to care for in captivity, and they're not recommended for the saltwater novice. Now, a quarantine tank is a necessity, as this fish is susceptible to most saltwater disease, especially marinic and Bruckenella. Use extreme caution before using copper medications because clownfish are extremely sensitive to copper. Now, the common names are tomato clown, red clownfish, and brittle clownfish. Tomato clowns are easy to moderate because they can be territorial and aggressive. The tomato clown gets 5 inches and their pH should be anywhere from 8 to 8.4. Their temperature should be 72 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And their specific gravity or salinity should be anywhere from 1.020 to 1.024. They live 68 years and they are from the Indo-Pacific, and they can be peaceful but will become aggressive with other fish that approach its space. Avoid mixing the various clown species. If you have a mix of different clown species in your tank, they will fight. If you have a host anemone in the aquarium with them, they will defend it. It usually works out best if you have only one or a pair of clowns in your tank. Tomato clownfish breeding. They have been bred in captivity, and it is usually better to buy a tank-raised fish because they will adapt better in the home aquarium. Recommended tank size for a tomato clown begins at 30 gallons and up. Tomato clown tank mates. Avoid keeping them in an aquarium with lionfish, snappers, groupers, triggers, eels, or any other predatory fish large enough to eat them. Keep only one clownfish species in your aquarium. Do not mix the various clownfish species. However, some people have done that, and it has worked out. We'll discuss that later on the show. Now, is the tomato clownfish reef tank compatible? The clownfishes should do well in reef tanks. They may pose a problem with other clownfish species, so watch closely. And that is how you care for a tomato clownfish. Alright, what a great way to start our show. Some awesome information on clownfish. Now, we're going to go ahead and take our first intermission and only intermission of the show. After the intermission, I'm going to talk about care for the maroon clownfish and care for the skunk clownfish, and then I'll have a discussion on feeding and tank mates for clownfish. We're going to hear some music and a little words of advertisement for the American Variety Network, and when we come back, we're going to continue this fun discussion on clownfish. Don't forget to call in at 1-347-989-8142 with any questions on clownfish or to discuss why you like clownfish or chat clownfish. We're back with more after this quick intermission. Now, what I use to feed clownfish and what I recommend is live brine shrimp. Live brine shrimp would be beneficial for clownfish. You could also do frozen food. I would personally recommend spirulina brine shrimp, bloodworms. You can do Hikari, BioPure, frozen marine algae mix and marine angel mix. So there's a wide variety of foods you can feed your clownfish. Just pick carefully and pick the right food. Alright, tank mates for clownfish. Quickly, clownfish can live with a variety of anything. Just make sure the fish does not eat the clownfish. Make sure you don't have anything that can eat small clownfish. Really, tangs, puffers, royal dottybacks, royal grammas, angels, blennies, wrasses. A lot of fish can live with tangs. The last thing I'll talk about on tonight's show, mixing clownfish species. They say it is not recommended because the clownfish species may fight. I have no experience with this because, like I said, I've only been keeping saltwater for 2 months. However, I have found some people who have successfully mixed clownfish species. There's a guy on YouTube that's got a very beautiful marine tank with a maroon clown and a couple pairs of Ocellaris clowns. So I will say this. If you are bound and determined to mix several species of clownfish, I would recommend acclimating them together in the aquarium. Buy them at the same time and acclimate them in the same bucket. That way they get used to each other. If possible, have them bag together as well. That could possibly work out as well. So, it really depends on a lot of factors. But I will tell you, if you want to mix clownfish species, make sure you've got a large aquarium. And I definitely do not advise anything smaller than a 120 to mix clownfish. You should always acclimate different species of clownfish together. Now, if you do want to mix clownfish species, be prepared for disappointment because it may not work. There is no guarantee, there's no surefire way that it's going to work. It's just trial and error. I learned that in the aquarium hobby. Trial and error. You know, some people have told me that in the freshwater hobby, when I was a freshwater hobbyist for so long, so-and-so would not work. But I risked it and it worked. So it's one of those things that you got to try and see. You can listen to other people telling you it's never going to work, but until you try and see it, you're never going to know. So do I personally recommend it? Well, off of all the research I've done, I wouldn't recommend it, but would I try it? I'm tempted to. I'm tempted to see how it works out. And if it doesn't work out, well, then you know in the future that you cannot mix clownfish species together. But if you acclimate them together and they each have their own territories, they should be pretty good. Alright, well, we've reached the end of another wonderful saltwater tropical fish chat here on Aquarium Talk the Podcast on American Variety Network. I enjoyed this show. I love chatting about saltwater fish because I love the saltwater hobby. It really is wonderful. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this show as much as I enjoyed hosting it. Now, this is our last aquarium talk and our last fish show of 2015. Believe it or not, 2015 is coming to an end in a week. So, we're not going to do another aquarium talk until 2016. The next time I see you here on Saltwater Tropical Fish Chat on Aquarium Talk, it will be 2016. Our next saltwater fish that we are going to talk about is a dream fish of mine that I am currently owning, and he's getting ready to go into 120, and that is the yellow tang. So in January, the fish of the month will be yellow tangs. Alright, so if you are interested in keeping the yellow tang, make sure you check in on January to see when I'll be doing the yellow tang show. I cannot wait to host the show on yellow tangs. So, if you enjoyed today's show, please tell your friends about our show and have them follow my Blog Talk Radio show. blogtalkradio.com/American Network and click follow. I do fish keeping shows, WWE wrestling shows, cooking shows, talk shows, and any show really. I do a show that virtually covers almost every topic. So they may like some of my other shows as well. So make sure that you have them follow my show. Also, have them check out my fish keeping podcast page on Facebook, Aquarium Talk the Podcast. That little page is starting to grow. I started with 1 like and now I've got 34 likes. So if you enjoyed today's show, please go and hit the like button on Aquarium Talk the Podcast. I really would appreciate your support and your like of this fish keeping podcast. So, with that being said, I would like to wish you luck in the saltwater hobby. I would like to wish you luck in keeping your clownfish alive and happy. And I hope you enjoy keeping clownfish, because clownfish rock and clownfish are totally awesome. So, if you love clownfish, this is a great show, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly loved hosting it. Alright, Aqua Alex wishes all of your fish a Merry Christmas, and I wish all of you, my listeners, a Merry Christmas as well. Thank you so much for listening to this show. I appreciate your listens. Have a great Christmas and Happy New Year, fish keepers. Aqua Alex is out of here, and the American Variety Network says thank you for listening. Merry Christmas, fish keepers, and good night and Happy New Year.